Our next guest is Cedric Howard, and his book is called Freedom: A Step-by-Step Guide to Wealth and Financial Independence. So, welcome, Cedric, to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you, Gwen. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Okay, so a lot of times people make New Year's resolutions
Yeah.
about their finances, probably their finances, and they're going to the gym are the two most common ones that they end up most people end up breaking them by March. But um tell us about a little bit about your background in finance and what made you write this book called Freedom.
Yeah, well, interesting. My background in finance actually happened by mistake. By trade, I'm an educator. I've been a higher education administrator now for 31 years.
Okay.
I've been a college vice president for 27 years. And very fortunate to have that as, what I consider to be my W-2 job. That is a job that kind of pays the bill. And because of my role in higher education, I was always responsible for enrollment and student affairs. And so I got the best and worst of the student experience. And so one of the things that I've learned, especially in, with dealing with financial aid and financial awareness of our students, was that they were struggling. Many of them made a decision to come to college and they did not have the financial backing of their families or their communities to really afford college. And that became something of concern for me because if I don't want to give you a college experience and then jeopardize your future because you're in debt for the next 25, 30 years. And that was something of concern with me. And so that was where the actual curriculum was developed called Freedom. And it was really to break you free of the concerns of the lack of preparation for college on the front end. So that was kind of where the curriculum began. But the journey actually began long before then. And very fortunate that my wife raised me well, and been married for 27 years. And a couple of months into our marriage, we was newlyweds, and I never forget it. It was like yesterday. She just yelled. We had this two-bedroom apartment. And she just yelled, and it's kind of like being a Southerner. When your mother called your full name, you know you're in trouble. And so my wife called my full name, so I ran and she said, "Well, hey, we have a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" She says, "You told me that you spent $5. You spent $5.16." I said, "Wait a minute. We arguing over 16 cents." She says, "Yes, you spent $5.16. If I ask you how much you spent, please tell me the full amount." And I said, let's just break this down a bit. Let's just slow down. We're in the second month of marriage. I said, where's this coming from? And that's when she began to tell me. Now, my wife is an electrical engineer. She has, graduated and was a practicing engineer at the time. But she had fears from her upbringing of being poor. And that was the first argument we had over 16 cents. And I said to her, I said, listen, if 16 cent is the worst thing we have to deal with for the rest of our life, I think we're going to have a happy marriage. And so that was where the systems began to be put in place in, tracking financial, our budgets and budget management and understanding how financial systems work. And then I applied my personal experiences of learning how financial systems work into my work experience and develop a curriculum. And then about 8 months ago, one of my mentees said, "Hey, Dr. C, all these years you've been teaching us, these lessons, they refer to them as SETI notes. You really need to go ahead and just write that book and just tell everybody else what we all know, because you have really transformed our lives in many ways. You set us free." You broken the chains of poverty over our family, just like what's happened to my family. I'm a first generation college student. My wife is a first generation college student. Both of my kids have degrees and they went to private schools and they're all doing well. But you know, that was the kind of the premise behind the book, and you know how I married a life situation that was a real life situation very early in my marriage with a practical situation that was affecting me in my professional life, and then that led to the curriculum that ultimately became the book that you have before you known as Freedom.
Do you have a copy of your book handy so you can show it on the screen so
I
people can know
do.
what the cover looks like? And so when they go to order it, they'll know, make sure they're ordering the correct book. Because as you know, or you may know, book titles cannot be copyrighted. So
Yes,
mhm. So there might be 1,000 books with the title Freedom on.
that is
So
so true. So
yeah.
true.
So you know what you mentioned about your wife mentioning, and it really wasn't the 16 cents. It was her upbringing as it relates to money. And a lot of people don't realize that their upbringing as it relates to money, they carry that into their relationships, into the marriage. And it can be positive or negative. You know, some people, if they grew up like my husband grew up very poor. And so but I didn't. So my husband was very tight, when we first got
Yes.
married. And I had to uh, slowly ease him out of that tightness. I said, if you just hanging on to a nickel that long is not healthy. You're not in that situation anymore. And I didn't grow up like that. So, we have to have some sort of compromise. And now he did teach me the art of negotiation,
Mhm.
because the first offer that he gives is really an insult. Like, you have to really start with that to
Yes.
really
Yes.
get a good price. You should negotiate. So I learned that from him.
Absolutely. And the most important thing is that, you know, when you, especially when you're negotiating it from that perspective, you also realize the person in control is always the person responding. So you give an answer so they will respond to you. So now you can take back control of the negotiations
Yeah.
from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, it is life experiences. I can tell you from our life. Me being educated, my wife being an engineer, my daughter's now in the medical field. My son is in the military. For me, being the first one in my family to go to college and get a degree, it was transformational. And so, we did work study, we worked, outside of work, whenever we had breaks. And I just realized that struggle is real. And so for us, I had to assure her that this was not going to be the way that we were going to move forward. And so, we've told this story hundreds of thousands of times about the 16 cent. And, so somebody recently, I happened to be a pastor's kid. So we were working with the church in their marriage counseling and the financial part. And someone said, "So how did you get her past that?" And I said, "I told her one thing. I said, I set it down. I said, listen, we're going to get past this because I have EP." And she said, "What is MP?" I said, "I have earning potential and I need for you to invest in my earning potential." And the reason I said that was because I believed in myself. And that's where you have to really begin, with your financial awareness. You have to realize that the greatest struggle that you will ever overcome is the one within yourself. You have to begin to confront how you see things and realize that money doesn't have emotions. Money does not, grip you in those same ways, but it can take hold of your life and it can dictate ways and it can dictate things in your life that you don't even think of. And so, what I oftentimes tell people is, when money is not your master, purpose becomes your God. And so, use your purpose and your values to shape how you interact with money, because money is a relationship. And just like with everything in it that has ship in it, the ship is supposed to take you from one place to another. That relationship is supposed to take you from one place to another. And so have a positive relationship with money and realize that it's not your beginning and your end. It is simply a mechanism, a modality to get you to where you desire that you would like to be.
Yeah, this money or finances is one of the top three reasons for a divorce.
Yes.
Mainly because people don't talk about it. They assume a lot of things. I think before they get married, they don't really talk about finances, and and they assume some things. A lot of times, people one person will be the responsible person, and the
Mm-hmm.
other person is, let's say, the fun person. But the fun person is not watching the money, and so that can really cause conflicts. Yeah, it's all kinds of different scenarios that can cause problems, but you do need to have the same idea about money in terms of savings. How much should you save? Have fun, but it needs to be planned fun. Don't spend your rent money at the club.
That's right.
Things like
That's right.
that.
Yeah,
Some
that's right.
people, I've been married twice. So my first marriage was 4 years, and he spent the rent money in the club. But you
Mm,
can't assume anything about a person. You have to talk about these things beforehand.
yeah.
And see, that was a mistake I made. I assumed that he would be responsible once we got married, even though he was irresponsible before we got married. But I thought that once we got married, that somehow this light bulb would go off, and no, that doesn't happen. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, you
but
have to engage in those conversations. Have
you
to
do,
engage in those conversations.
you do. Now talk about the higher education piece of it since you're there. I one of my I'm an author as well. Um, my most successful book is about how to go to college debt free with scholarships.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And it was nominated for an Image Award when I first came out with it. But I do an update every year. And my daughter went to North Carolina Central, which is an HBCU,
Uh-huh.
out of state because I'm in Houston. And she went totally debt free. She
Yes.
graduated from college with zero debt, and so I wanted the same thing for other people. And so I do the update of the book. It has over 300 scholarships in it, and it has the how to about how to manage that whole scholarship process and the application of it, how to track the ones you're getting, and so forth. But when she graduated, um, all of the seniors, they went to the financial aid office to see how much they owed and when they were going to start making payments. Well, she went and she didn't owe anything. So all of her classmates owed money.
Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a single one of her friends and line sisters and all of that didn't have debt except her. So that really is a life changing thing for a person. If they can get out of school with no debt, they can start off with a clean slate. It really is
Yeah.
life changing. But tell us about your experience with students at the university where you teach. Where are you teaching? I should ask. Where are
So
you
currently I
administrating?
am over the enrollment of all the community colleges in Seattle.
Oh, you're on
And
the West
so
Coast. Okay. All
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. I was born and
Okay.
raised in the South and have been vice president at 5 institutions, and now thought it was important for me to oversee a system. And so
Oh,
I've left
okay.
the 4 year world and gone into the places where I really feel that I can make a significant difference, and that's at the community colleges and making sure that I'm being very equitable in the practices and distribution of funds and using the financial resources as not just a hook, but making sure that they support the retention and persistence efforts of our students, which is something that we lack in many institutions. And so I do agree with you that if you have a system that is in place, it is extremely important to understand that system, and financial, the ability to know where scholarships is an important aspect. So I commend you and congratulations to HBCUs. I happen to uh, attend Florida A&M University, so I'm a rattler.
Okay. My niece
And
went to A&M. One of my
yeah,
nieces went
went
there.
on a music scholarship, so I'm a part of the Marching 100, and so I'm extremely happy now that we're National Band of the Year, from
Okay.
that perspective. So But but for me, what I realize is that for many, especially my generation, so I am plus 50 now, but for our generation, especially those that are Gen Xers, we were told that the golden ticket was to go to college. It was to go to college, not necessarily prepare for it. You're just going to go. And that was the golden ticket. And when we got jobs, no one taught us how to make preparations so that the next generation can go and not have those debt. Because there was a fundamental shift that happened within higher education in the 90s because so many people were going, the states couldn't afford it. And so they start pulling back and students start paying more, and in order to pay more and cover more, they had to take out loans. And so that's where it became incumbent upon me as the person who was the primary, gatekeeper to say, I need to start educating our community. And I need to make sure that they have a financial literacy and a financial awareness program beginning in middle school, because in middle school determine what your courses and your course of action in high school, which prepares you for ultimately college. And so it was not just incumbent upon me to do it for my kids, because ultimately, when your child becomes a member of my institution, they're technically my child as well. That's the way I see it. And so I developed this curriculum and went into churches, nonprofits, fraternity and sororities. I happen to be a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So '06, to my brothers is out there. I wanted to make sure that I use the platform that I have to educate people in communities so that they have that information and realize that the small amounts that they were given, especially like a state like Florida or other states that have 529 education programs that are penny on the dollars for you to go to those institutions for free. And if you buy them, if you get into them when they're in sixth and seventh grade, by the time they graduate high school, you paid for their 4 to 5 years of school, and pennies on the dollar. But no one was telling people in our, individuals in our community that. And so that's where the curriculum really came into place. And then I began to, as a part of this, many people begin to ask me about investments and estate planning, and I realized that in our communities we just lack a lot of just basic knowledge. And so when I wrote Freedom, the actual curriculum, I actually did a step-by-step guide of how to set up a bank account, how to understand the difference between a checking and a savings account, how to look at long terms savings, how to do investment, what is a mutual fund, what I mean. I just went through each step and provided definitions for everyone because I wanted to make sure if you were the grandma who was, supporting your grandkids and you only had 15, $20, you had the same information as someone who had gone to a top tier business school as it relates to accessing the information, to maximize your ability to support your family. So that was the premise behind the book and what I've been able to do. At every institution that I've served at, I've increased enrollment by at least 10 to 20% within my first 2 or 3 years of being there, primarily because I'm educating people in the community of what it means to not just to attend, but ultimately to be sustainable and to graduate, because one of the reasons that they drop out is because of the financial burden that's placed on them. This is
Yeah.
a true fact.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Most African Americans drop out of school not because of grades. They drop out because after their third term, they've reached their loan threshold and they can't afford other loans without the parents signing for them. And
Mm-hmm.
so when they have to go that parents plus loan, that's where the rub occurs. And so from my perspective, if we can begin to mitigate those things on the front end and give guidance and instructions, now as a community, we can create an ecosystem to support our kids and ultimately support the communities that they're going to go back into.
Well, you and I are in agreement on that, certainly, because one, well, in several aspects of what you said. One, that it needs to start, you said middle school, and I agree, at high school at the latest, 10th grade, not 12th, because I tell parents with regards to the book that I have, 10th grade is when they need to get the book. They can't wait until senior year, second semester. For one, a lot of the scholarships will be gone. Um, and but two, you need to know what the process is before you even start applying. And my book tells them the whole process of applying for a scholarship, what to expect, the whole when are they going to notify you. Um, and it's not something that you can do quickly. But when you were talking about the 90s, it was something that happened in the 2000s as the cost of education started going up. They started putting parents on the hook
Mm-hmm.
for these loans. It used to just be the student that was borrowing, but because of the limitations on the amounts the student
Yes.
can borrow, they're putting the parents and the students. So you got two generations on the hook for one degree, which makes no sense whatsoever. And
Yeah.
so, but people don't know what they don't know, you know. So it's good to go that you're going into the communities to give this information
Yeah.
because the people perish for a lack of knowledge. And
Yeah.
this is what happens.
That I mean, that is strictly from the good book. I would
Yeah.
say that is more than two generations. I would say it's at least three generations because it's the parents, it is the students themselves, and because of the financial issues and concerns that come along with the loans, and oftentimes they're defaulting at a higher rate, they can't get homes, and now the next generations are affected. So it is
Oh, you're right.
generational,
Yes, you're right about
what I
that.
consider to be generational curses that is occurring because of decisions that you don't really think about. And
Mm.
so, and so this is something that I say, when I'm dealing with, special ed community, I said, isn't it interesting that on average, 78% of those students that are attending higher education make a determination before the senior year of high school? 78%. In the Black community, that number is 43%. We're
Okay.
not even determining to start the search to go into higher education until the senior year of high school. Now, there's a significant gap there. It's almost 90% for those that have a parent with at least one degree. And this almost is like 12 or 13% for those who don't have a parent within a degree. So, I mean, we
Okay.
have a huge, you know, delta there that we need to address. And so, to me, it is neglectful for me to have this information and not to develop a system or process by which to support our community. And that's extremely important for us to be very knowledgeable of, but most importantly, to care enough to say, I care enough about my community that I want to make sure that we're not perpetuating generational curses, that we're turning those curses into blessings, and that we end the cycle, we break the cycle, and we're actually using the mechanism known as higher education as a stepping stone into our future rather than the stumbling blocks of our past. And that's something we should be very intentional about in everything that we do.
Well, Cedric, we're at the end of our time. So it goes by very fast. And so we have to end the show at 9 and show a copy of your book. Once again, you've given us some amazing wisdom to start off the year with, and it's called Freedom, a step-by-step guide to wealth and financial independence. And thank you very much. You're joining us from the West Coast. You're in the town with my team that didn't make the playoffs this year, but maybe next year. I don't think they're gonna go far with Gino, but we'll see. Anyway, thank you so much for being a guest on the show and continued success with you with everything that you're doing with financial um, education for our community.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, have a great night.
All right, be blessed.